So global total reward is really a philosophy that recognizes that a care package that attracts people to the organization and retain people in an organization is not only the pay. It's very important, the pay and the basic benefits and allowances. So that's a kind of like the more important piece of total rewards. But also, when we offer somebody to come to the organization or somebody to stay and grow in the organization, people also look about what is my career path, what is my development, my capability to really kind of increase my capacities in the organization, what is my career progression, and also what is the environment I'm working on, what is the wellness, the recognition, the culture. So those two things in the back, in the low part of the presentation, are starting to be more important than ever, especially for the new generation of employees. So we really are reviewing our global total rewards, counting on those all those four elements. Now, what is critical is that we are starting this project, really starting to look on pay and benefits, but we really are working as part of the people agenda in the other two topics. Next one, please. Thank you. But why we're doing this initiative now? And for people that are in care for many, many years, we have discussed about this for 10, 12, around that. And we were always saying we need to review really our compound band, philosophy. We need to be more global. This is really not working for us. We are still not anymore a U.S. organization that has some presence in different countries. We really want to be a global organization. So what does that mean to be really a global organization? Requires that we pay attention that our policies and practices really respond to the model of the business, right? Really respond to our operating environment. We really want to commit to recognize and harmonize total rewards policies across all our global workforce. At this moment, what we have is what I always say, the 600 and the 6,000, right? So the 600 is the people that are in the U.S. payroll. That means people here in the U.S., domestic staff, and also people internationally. So all of these are part of one, let's say, philosophy and one kind of package. But at the same time, we have every country office with its own kind of alternatives and dynamics on the different total rewards. And they are very different in some way or another one. So the idea in the total rewards project is to be able to have a common philosophy, the same approaches, and some consistency. That doesn't mean that we are gonna have exactly the same pay scale in every part of the world. That doesn't mean that every single person will have exactly the same benefits around the world. That means that our philosophy is gonna be the same and it's gonna be applied in different markets, and it's gonna be applied differently depending on the classification of the jobs that we're gonna have. Yeah. So that's a completely different approach than the one that we have at the moment. And then because of that, we really I think we will contribute to increase mobility and changing the makeup of our workforce, resulting in changes applying the policy more consistently. So some of our policies and practices, especially, for example, for international, staff, are really in the approach that we have Americans moving overseas, right? So everything is kind of thinking, for U.S. citizens. And I'm saying because a lot of things, like when we don't have a U.S. citizen, it's kind of like how we adapt this, right? So the reality is our workforce, the majority of the international people are not from the U.S. We have people from Europe, we have people from Kenya, we have people from different parts of the world. So how we make sure that we really are responding to their needs and understanding the complexity and diversity of our workforce. But more than that, we also have a huge gap between our national staff that want to really kind of move and go to another country to work, or really want from the country they are to be able to work more sub-regionally or regionally. And we don't know how to adapt that. What exactly that means? Are they international? They are nationals. Where do they payroll them, etc.? So I think this mobility piece is very important. The more we want to be agile and the more we want to be diverse, we need to review our philosophy of total rewards looking at that. Next one, please. So I'm not going to review every detail of this, but this is what is behind the philosophy. When you do a project of this dimension, and when you try to kind of manage an organization that has presence in around 42 plus places in the world, you need to have really a philosophy behind where you can check yourself on the decisions that you are making, as we're not going to do one fit all. right? What is going to be fixed and what is going to be flexible? What are the things that will make sure that we really have a philosophy that will apply in different contexts? So these are very important elements of our philosophy. One is that we really want to continue attracting very passionate and committed people around the world, right? And that is a very particular group of people, right? We want to make sure they really see themselves and they see the career path in the organization and they feel they're really respected and rewarded. We want to really value the diversity of our workforce, you know, and this is in the top of our agenda. We want to make sure we recognize people from different backgrounds and experiences, and those came with different needs and different cultural expectations, different priorities, you know, and allow that to have some flexibility and choices in our reward system. So our reward system cannot be that fixed because we need to bring some space and some agility for different options for different people. Cannot be on the other side completely, everything can happen. You see, is something in between. What is going to be exactly the same for everyone and what can be adaptable and be different depending on the context of people. We want to be at the same time continue being competitive in the market. So we always compare ourselves in our competitiveness in the market, but not every of our country office do the same exercise every time. So we are worried that in some places we are great and in some places we don't know and in some places we're very below the market. And people talk about it, but we didn't really do enough data to be able to prove that. So in a global total reward approach, we will be checking that all the time, and we will make sure we have basic core actions that we need to have in every country office to make sure that we have really an assessment on the market. But also internally, we want to make sure we really were working in internal equity. And that's probably the more challenging one, to be honest. How we make sure that we compare jobs in different parts of the world. That doesn't mean that people will have exactly the same pay, but that will mean that you will be in a band of market very similar in one place to the other one. If you call yourself project manager and manage a $5 million portfolio in X place, should be more or less the same level that you will have in another country. And we have a very, 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 at this moment, dispersed job classification system. And then we really want to support what we call the whole person. And again, a lot of this is very aspirational. As you can see, we're trying to do it. So we want to enable personal and professional growth. We want to try to balance work and life, and we try to make sure we bring a space for learning and development. And finally, we want to be very transparent, effectively communicate all our total reward package, and need to be simple. A lot of the international people say to us that they don't understand exactly what we offer them. You know, you have a lot of different things, hypos, etc. Especially if you're not from the US, you really don't understand the 401k, how it works. So, but at the same time, even here, you know, if people are not from the US and people come to the US, it's a lot of kind of nuances about understanding what exactly we're offering, what exactly is my net. So we are going to be trying to be more simple, more transparent, but also if there are complexities, we're going to explain them and communicate them better. Okay. Next one, please. So following the philosophy, these are really the guiding principles. Again, one of the more exciting part of this project that I always call the more revolutionary, you know, base project that we need to have in our people agenda is really to be more global, to really be more fully global, no? Be able to support much more mobility in the organization, people moving from one country to the other one, people moving from one region to the other one, and really try to be, as much as we can, Care International. And a lot of people ask me, is this a Care International approach or this is a Care USA approach? It is not a full Care International approach. You know, we were with our HR director colleagues last week, 2 weeks ago in Bangkok discussing this, presenting what we're trying to do. A lot of the other big members are thinking in a similar approach, but we don't have exactly the same approach. And we are not going to be able to explicitly homogenize every single thing. Each member is a unit in itself. It's an organization in itself. And at the same time, have its own markets, its own dynamics, its own, you know, professional, you know, requirements, etc. But what we want is to really make sure that we all have the same philosophy, that we are really looking towards the same goals. And if we want to move people around the system in the different cares, we need to have some things that are going to be very similar. And Reggie will explain a little more about that. And so working in a confederation is something that we are paying attention to our principles. We want to be flexible, as I say. We want to be consistent. The equitability and minimum standard for every staff is very important in this project. We want to be as transparent as we really want and can be. We want to be responsible, and this is coming to, we cannot, maybe we have an ideal, right, of a global total reward package, but we need to check with our own reality. Is this really possible? And maybe we will work towards that. So our good stewardship will be all the time thinking, we are not going to propose things that are going to be able to be implemented in every part, in all the part of the world. We want to make sure that we manage that, and we want to be affordable. We want to continue being competitive, and again, what I say and highlight, this project is very, very strongly linked with our talent project, with our talent initiative and our diversity initiative. So the Global Total Reward is the foundation to support a much more diverse organization in the world. And we really have very clear commitments to GED. And we're going to kind of connect and making sure we have the gender approach, the diversity approach all the time in different decisions that we are making. Next one, please. So I'm passing now to Reggie to explain a little bit how the project look like and the timing and when decisions are going to be made and when are going to be announced.
Okay, thank you, Mari. So what we have here is around the deliverables as well as our desired outcomes. And the first step is, instead of being more reactive, we want to take a holistic approach. So the first area where we're focusing on, we have our current state where we have inconsistencies as far as how jobs are actually written. And also what we're trying to move towards is really having more of a standardized and more accessible place where you have positions and job descriptions. So that is classified with the job catalog. The next one is around job classification. So with job classification right now around our Care USA, and this is globally around Care USA, you will see more inconsistent approaches, and which creates more complexity, and I'll say it takes a lot of time and decisions, where we're moving towards having more of a systemized, classified way with clear expectation and criteria to help leaders around the world understand what job they hold and what's required of them. And then moving along to core benefits, right now it's very decentralized, and what we want to do with this is really have an approach where we can actually see globally all the core benefits or benefits that are being offered, not only here in the US or international, but also in country offices, and create more what we call a minimum standard, meaning that anyone around the globe will have the same minimum standards of core benefits. And then finally, but not least, on pay allowances. So right now it's decentralized. We make what we call ad hoc, sometimes package deals. And what we want to try to do is align that to the classification. So by aligning that to the classification, you have not only your country office market or your local market, you also have your regional market, and then you have your US market and things of that nature. But you want to take that in consideration when we are aligning our pay and allowances. Okay, next slide, please. So this right here is just an example of our expectation.
Listening to his HR.
It's not that it is exhaustive, but this is right here where we have the foundation around where all staff will receive a salary and all staff will have core benefits. Based on your location, things of that nature, you will then move to more to around where it will apply to other staff. So some staff based on if they're mobilized and or if they're taking on a certain type of classification or job may have educational allowances and or what we call mobility allowances, because sometimes we work in very complex hardship locations where staff are mobilized, that we definitely want to make sure that we recognize that, as well as any market adjustment. So market adjustments, and again, this is when we have our local markets, you have your regional markets, and you have what we call our global markets. and or look at how we can realign and continuously work to make sure it is successful long term. Next slide, please. So this right here is just giving us the high level project. So right now, again, as mentioned, we are in the investigation stage, and this is our first time trying to collect data globally. And we're now collecting data not only from headquarters or here in the US, but also at our regional offices as well as our country offices. And then what we will do is we'll have that information, which will help us do our more analytics as far as looking at what we have across the Confederation. And then we will then move to phase 2, which is more of the invention, which will help us around designing the job architect, and then making sure that you all have tools and templates, and then actually looking at the market analysis, and then the structural design. And then implementation around August and December is around actually implementing the job architect. So we're building it in phase 2, implementing it in phase 3, and then continuously looking at the change management. And then phase 4 around 2020, looking at follow-up and rollout of any type of improvement that needs to be made and any other maintenance. So that is the project timeline. So we'll open it up for questions.
So people that are in virtually, you can put your questions in the chat, or you can be able to raise your hands, and here open also to the floor here in Atlanta. And we need to use the mic if anyone have a question. Raise your hand so quickly. And Aris, can you monitor the chat and tell us if there are any question over there, please? So no, Johan, that's what we explained about the CARE members. So this is a CARE USA global project. So that means the headquarters, the regional office, the country office of CARE USA, right? That's kind of our scope of control. We are working with the CI members to try to be able to have the same philosophy, and some of them are really looking and adapting some of the things that we are doing. Some of them are ahead of the game, and some of them are doing already some changes in their own packages, right? So we are really sharing knowledge and experience. We are not making decisions together as CARE International. And that's already an agreement that we made. So as much as we can, we're going to try to do it, especially for positions that are going to be very similar, country director positions, ACD positions, chief of party positions, right? That they are very similar in different parts of the world, that will be able to help us to have some more consistency about allowances and benefits. The connection between the job titles and grades is unclear. Is that something I couldn't read the whole thing. Aris, are you there? Can you help me? Aris is in Manila. So we have Manila, Kenya, that's here. Can you please read the questions for us? We cannot see the whole chat here.
I can read the question. It says connection.
And if you can open, and sorry, if you can open the chat in your, because you are showing your screen, right?
Yes.
Can you open the chat so we here in Atlanta can see the questions too?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll have to change how. Let me read this and then I'll
That's fine. That's fine.
The connection between the job titles and grades isn't clear. Is that something this initiative will address?
Yes, that is currently that will be addressed. And right now we're looking at, like, we have different markets, and in certain markets, and this is where we have to also make a decision based on our whole data analysis. And then we will have to make a decision once we collect the data around how we align the job titles as well as to whatever grade bands or whatever is decided on that point.
So the idea is that we are going to have the same architecture of job families, right? And the different jobs will fit in different families, if people can follow me. The name exactly can be a little bit different depending on your context, because I was just sharing, for example, in Latin America, coordinator is a very high level role. It's not like coordinator in the US. It's more like a senior manager, right? So people can be able to translate, what do that mean in my context? But when you go to the system, you know that you belong to this kind of family and this kind of job. Project manager, program director, you know, there are some things that we can really standardize, but there are some things that probably will require some twist in the particular context. But that doesn't mean that then becomes to be an exception. That means that We say, okay, coordinator in Honduras means this in the job architecture. This one in Zimbabwe or whatever means this, you know? So that's what we are going to try to do. I don't know if I helped the question. Any questions here in the room? You're so excited. Why? Yes, there is one question here in the room, and then I will pass, and we're still not seeing your chat, but you can read the question for us.
Okay.
Hello. I was just going to ask if you are planning on basically changing current positions in any way, or is this sort of just an initiative for any new positions that are created?
We are looking the present, and we are going to reorganize the present. So in that sense, it could be that some of your positions will be better classified, and it could be some positions will be kind of shifting the title, especially in the U.S. So we will, in the U.S., we're going to, this is a business unit. So the U.S. need to be one way of naming things, right? As other organizations will be, like, let's say, Tanzania or Uganda, etc. So yes, we're going to have some potential adjustments in the positions here. And I pass it to you. I couldn't read the chat, so can you?
Sure. Some questions from the chat. Are there any specific benefits that are already in mind?
We couldn't hear you well.
Are there any specific changes to benefits that are already in mind?
Okay, so are there any specific changes and benefits already in mind? Currently, what we're doing now is we're still in the investigation phase. And so in the investigation phase, we will get a chance to actually see what is happening across the global Care USA. And this is where we will decide on what will be minimum standards, because we know that we see inconsistency as far as benefits across our Care USA. And that's where we will make those decisions.
And for example, we didn't define yet the core benefits, but we have some thinking. For example, life insurance is something that we offer in some places, not in others. The scheme pensions, you know, how they work in different countries, etc. So we are really first trying to kind of homogenize some of the core benefits for everyone. At this moment, we have, of course, checking and benchmarking, but we don't have any decision about changes that will make in benefits if your question is related to the US in particular.
Thank you. And another in terms of compensation for country office staff.
And we cannot hear you, unfortunately, well. So if the person that raised the question, you can just open your mic and ask the questions. That will be better, because I'm sorry, we cannot really hear your question. It came choppy.
How about this one, Mary? Can I just read the chat for Anne?
Yes,
Hello?
they are doing that. Yes,
Yep.
they're doing this.
I have a question. What does this mean in terms of compensation for country office staff?
Yeah, so again, I think a big question that came since the beginning, is this only for the US and the internationals, or this is for everyone? This is for everyone in KUSA. So every country office that is part of a Care Country Office USA line management, so 42 countries at this moment, right, are going to be part of this project. So what does that mean in the particular country? We're going to discuss with you when we have all the information in hand and what we're going to implement. We're going to discuss with you what does that mean exactly for your country. Some countries have already done some exercises of job classification architecture, so that's why we're collecting everything and try to see how they match and how we can be able to be more consistent. So yes, this is global. This is for everyone that is part of Care USA, including national staff in the country offices.
Okay, another question. In some countries, a specific salary scale and grading is imposing from government sides to follow. So will this be a contradiction to this package? Okay, so one thing that we want to make sure that is critical and true is that we definitely want to make sure that we're statutory compliant. So we will definitely make sure that that will be the foundation of any type of global total rewards that we do. So we will make sure whatever we do that we are legally compliant as well as statutory compliant. So that will take precedent.
And that means that there will be areas where we challenge about our guidance and principles and philosophy if there is some restrictions in the government side where we operate. So there's not too much that we can be able to do potentially in some places. So it's an excellent question. And I saw that question on, is it going to be more costly for care or not, right? Be careful, don't jump in. That's what I say, the stewardship is key. So we can be able to analyze and start thinking, wow, we can, ideally it will be this. But then we need to analyze and say, what is possible? What is possible in the next 2 years? What is possible to cost recovery in some projects? What is possible in the 5-year horizon? So I think we are going to be able to have a better analysis when we really know where we are. However, our assumption is that it probably should not be more costly. Probably it's going to be even cost neutral or less. Because, and here this one, because I think this is a challenging one, because we think we have a lot of people in the international U.S. payroll that not necessarily are global positions, that don't necessarily need to be payroll in the U.S. payroll, right? So it can be regional, can be localized, etc. So it will be an analysis for those positions, and if possible, that will kind of rebalance a little bit of what we're looking for. Does that make sense? Next. Any other question here?
So we have another question on the chat. When can we expect to start these tools in the country office?
When?
When can we expect to start these tools in the country office?
So, I think because the number of people in the Zoom is hard to hear perfectly, so we're going to read the questions here better. So when we expect it, so we are starting implementing this in August 2019. That doesn't mean that everything will implement in one time, right? We are going to analyze and as soon as we have information, probably around, we're thinking March, April, we're going to see what exactly is going to be, starting to be implemented in August and one is going to be kind of following up. Not everything is going to be implemented in once. So that means that we're going to coordinate with the different regions for the different countries and see how the implementation is going to look like. So implementation for the U.S. payroll is going to be more manageable for us because we control it 100%, right? But for the country office, we will need to be kind of checking and analyzing what will be the time frame. But we cannot wait 5 years to start implementing things, right? Because if we want to be consistent, we need to start kind of implementing the changes together in some way or another one. So it is an aggressive time frame for a project of this magnitude. I'm looking Jill here, and some of the financial management took like 3 years. But we were discussing this for a while, and we were collecting information about this for a while, right? This is the first time we really finally were able to kind of put the stick and be able to collect all the global data, right? But this is not new. This is not something that we just start discussing. Yes, Emma.
Thinking on the implementation, I will suggest it is something very important for us, especially in program. If we can design a template to help us to really budgeting for the positions, because right now we realize, even in the country office and also for us in PPL, sometimes looks like we are not knowing well the fringe benefit package. So we really need to have an updated template to help us to people working on proposals
and development
to really do a correct calculations on.
Yes, and the good thing on this project, and I don't want to over-offer because it's not going to happen that quickly, is that you're going to have that globally. At this moment, you need to just chasing the finance colleague in Haiti to be able to give you the data, and then you're still kind of moving your finance, budget proposal, and you don't have it. Here, we're going to have clarity of who do what and how it is, right? Because we are going to have the information and we are going to be a little more consistent. You see, so I think that will help. But it's true. We are not going to kind of push ourselves to something that is not possible, right? So there are some things that probably will require a little bit longer, full implementation because the cycle of the budget will need to come or new projects will need to come. So donors didn't allow us to change things. So all of that will be analyzed in the implementation phase. We need to be very careful on that. That's true.
Okay, another question. Do we plan to have like a global survey like using Birches? And in this case, we're going to have a minimum standard pay for the given job category families across the board. And the question is, the answer is we will look at a variety of different survey data points because we can adopt a global market survey vendor. But what you want to do is also look at a variety of different, because we're going to have local context, regional context. So we're still going to look at a global vendor, but at the same time, we will also recommend, by setting the minimum standard, to look also locally, regionally, et cetera. So we will have those minimum standards.
The question was market surveys. Yeah. For some positions that we consider that are going to require a global expertise that we need to kind of hire from the global market, we will do a global survey. For positions that we think that are more required to be local or more required to be regional, we're going to make sure that people do it in their own context. There was also another question, I think, in the conversation yesterday about how much are going to be the input from you, right? We interview a group of people, diverse group of people, leaders and others, to be able to start the project. And I think it's going to be a loop of conversation and feedback. What we cannot do is a full kind of collaborating exercise, unfortunately, in these kind of things. But we would love to have your feedback. We would love to have any input that you can bring. Some of you came from another organizations and have a lot of experience of have done this before. So I have colleagues from Save the Children, for example, and Oxfam that came to CARE. They have passed through something very similar. So they feed us back saying, wow, be careful on this, make sure you pay attention to that, etc. So this is great. This is super useful for us. And also they were able to share with us the areas of major anxiety, right, in the different packages. So anything that you think is useful, there is an email that say globaltotalreward@care.org that you can really feed or ask questions, etc. We will be happy to be able to respond to you. Okay. There are much more questions here. And that's the idea. We did a very short presentation because the interest is having this right in hand. So our country office in the EXA region, that's Esther, are more or less in the process of reviewing the HR manuals. That this means that we should put on hold to this till we have the exercise done, or you can go ahead and include our current benefits without changing anything. So we were discussing with different regions. Reggie, you can share a bit more probably. In particular with EXA, there's a lot of effort to be able to do, job evaluations recently. A big country, Ethiopia, have done that, etc. What we want is to make sure the principles are clear and we are consistent to this approach. We don't want to put on hold everyone and anything, but at the same time, we don't want people to advance to do something and then we kind of go back and, rewind and do something different, because then the message to people will not be right. So maybe you can share more about
Yes, that's correct. Our goal is to make sure, if you could consult with us, just to make sure that sometimes we know we have consultancy services within country offices, and then sometimes the consultant may leave and we're not implementing in country. That consult with us just to make sure it's aligning to this project.
Amanda, I have a question about how we do the market analysis, just to make sure for the US, we really have identified 9 organizations that we compare with, and we compare all our level of salaries, including the executives. And we do that every 18 months, 2 years. And we also, when we have a new position, we have the way to be able to also collect that data. This is because we are part of a bigger group that can be able to share information. So for the US, it's easier for us in some way. We do that all the time, and we check and we measure ourselves in terms of competitiveness. We want to be above the median for our positions. That's our principle. And we are when we talk about total packages. So that's happening. I think that's what we want to have as a practice in the country office. And what we found is that some country offices are totally on top of this and they're great, and some country office, oh my God, I didn't have done that for 10 years. And people say, hey, we didn't adjust our salary for 10 years. So there are a lot of, the spectrum is huge, but for the US, we do that. We don't compare ourselves with contractors, although we know we compete with them, okay, besides chief of party roles. Mainly because they are in another market. We compete with them in some proposals, but we are not like them, you see? So we need to compare ourselves with some peers and international NGOs. But of course, we have some information about some of the contractors. They have stronger salaries, but not necessarily the same consistency in benefits, but also they don't have like the stability that people in the NGO world can have. So there are some plus and minus.
And then also some country offices also utilize a group called Birch's Group. and that's what they compete with. A lot of the NGO world uses Virtuous Group and INGOs, as well as some use DevEx in a variety of different means, and we're seeing that across the country offices.
Yeah, so they are very good questions. Let's start with the top. Under this global approach, may a US-based employee who moves to a regional or country office position will be subject to a new pay scale? Yes. Yes. Something that happened in the history of care is that you move your salary, right? And you were a VP here, and you take a country director position, a very small country office, and you move your salary, right? So that cannot happen. You know, we need to make sure that whatever position you are taking is related to the salary that you're going to receive. It's challenging, yes. Mobility is a challenge, yes. But we cannot afford something like that happening in the future, right? And it's a tough decision that I need to make, and I need to kind of, as my team said, confront. Now, that's why we are trying to do, especially for example, country director roles, we're going to have what we call a basic salary. And then we're going to add complexity and hardship, right? At this moment, we add hardship, but no complexity. Complexity is like, oh my God, I'm taking this big country office and I request for more money. But then when you move to another country office that's not that big, you carry your money with you, you know? So other organizations have already done that for many years. So base salary for country directors and add on depending of your skills and also your but that's kind of where we are going. Is there any other question there? So yeah, in Uganda we have changed from adding merit increases and we have changed it to performance bonus, and I agree this will be, yeah, I think some of our country office are trying to test some of these, so we are going to learn from you and learn from other peers too. So I don't think it's something that we're going to change that quickly, but it's something that we definitely we have in the horizon. Any other question in the chat, or anyone want to talk to us? That would be good to hear some voices from the other side. Here we are around like 20 people here in Atlanta.
Other ones, one from Kelly Buckley.
The other ones, can we just go? Oops, there are many. Oh yeah. I think there are some from Kelly. If we are going to have salary range available to job seekers, also any thoughts on making the salary scales available to all staff to help you in internal equity? There are studies to show the salary transparency can help you with pay gaps. We're discussing that. We didn't make a decision yet. The US don't have that practice. Europeans have that practice, but it's mainly because they don't have bands. They really have fixed salaries, and they add it depending if you have a master, a PhD, etc. That's it. So that's why you see a salary, you see a position, you see a salary. So ours is going to be a little different. So, but we definitely are going to go to more transparency. We need to see what exactly we can be able to share until we really organize everything well. A good news, we are doing in some of our metrics a gender pay gap analysis every year, and this is going to be global. So at this moment, we did the 600, the US and international. The good news is that we don't have any gap in our pay between women and men in the different levels, in different bands. So we have some differential, but it's considered no differential. So that's a huge achievement. That's kind of, if we compare our peers or any other ones, I think we're in the top of the list of congratulating us for that. But we are doing the same analysis at this moment by diversity. Our first cross is that we are not having any gap neither, but we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're working for the US in particular with the Diversity and Inclusion Council on that at the moment. So I think they're going to be more transparent in sharing with you data about our equity on salaries. I don't necessarily see we're going to put the whole band available, but we can be open to discussion about that. I think the question about the market I answered. I don't know. The cost of living, the last one. Will this change consider care implementation according to country office with its peers in the same country? Yes. So as I say, I mean, the market that we're going to be analyzing is your local market for country office for national positions. If we're going to move to a regional position, we're going to analyze the regional market. And we're going to have some global positions or required for global experience, we're going to analyze the global market. So yes, the market will be defined depending on what we really are looking for and the position that is going to be, the requirements for the positions that are going to be highlighted. There was another question about the cost of living. Will the assessment survey take into consideration difference in cost of living? So at this moment, we have consideration about the cost of living. You know, that's why we don't have the same salary in, sorry to use Latin America, I know Guatemala, Honduras, and Bolivia, and Ecuador, right? The same position, different salaries. Yes, all our market analysis for national positions is going to look the national market, right? And that's going to determine the salary range. We don't compare immediately care to care. And I know it's a challenge, right? Because our colleagues in the other, you know, crossing the border have a different salary that I have, but the reality is that they have a different cost of living in that country. The adjustment to what they need and how much the value of that currency is different. However, that doesn't mean that currently, yes, we have differences, right? So if we make market to market, there we have countries that we are very high in the market, and there we have countries that, as I shared in the beginning, that they are very below the market, that they didn't do an adjustment for many, many years. And this is related to some of the survival, you know, situations, some country office and the gap they have to be able to manage their finances. So there are other decisions that determine that. But there are differences. There are no equity. So we are not moving to a full equality. We're not moving to a full, like, everyone will have the same. We're moving that we want everyone to be competitive in their market, and we will define the band of competitiveness, in which level of the median of the percentile we need to be in every market, if that makes sense. So we'll be different, but we'll be comparable, you see? So living in Brazil is not the same that living in Bolivia, right? Living in Uganda or Tanzania is not the same that living in, let's say, Kenya or Sudan, or South Sudan, you see? And then for people that are going to be mobile. So if you are somebody from Tanzania, you want to run a global program, and you are required to move by the organization, not because you want to move and your family is moving to live in another place, but because the organization considers a business case for you to move to Kenya. We will do what is called a mobility allowance, and we will assess what exactly extra you need for your cost of living for that particular move, right? What the practice has been in care, unfortunately, is that sometimes personal needs was determining moving people and moving people from one package to another package. So we are not going to be able to do that. And we will accommodate in the much as we can if there are flexibility, but we don't want to determine your mobility allowance if you are a personal decision to move from one place to the other one. So, any other question? Are you excited? Yes? Yes, yes, go ahead. And we have like 5 more minutes. Yeah.
All right, it's around learning and development. Reggie did mention something about talent management. And I know it's been put on hold for some of us in the country offices. So does that mean that we're reviving the talent management? Does that mean we're having a new talent management process that is going to be also part of this process? It will be good to know. Thank you.
Yes, no, that's a great question. We consider the Global Total Reward new philosophy and platform foundational for the new care, right? Needed, necessary to have done that 10 years ago. So that's going to go moving forward. Part of the Total Reward include career path and career development. So we are relaunching our talent process. This year, we are using a different methodology, Esther, that is more simple, more related with the business, more quick, that will be applied initially to country director pipeline positions and to the GMT pipeline positions. So we are not doing global, we're not rushing and running everything, we're testing the new model with these 2 kind of critical positions, group of positions. And from that, we're going to start kind of embedding that to the different levels of the organization. So it's not going to happen immediately, but it's part of the work in the next 2 years.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, and it's great to hear some voices. Any other question? I think your questions are great, and I hope this session helped us to clarify some things or even open more questions for you. I mean, that's great because we're seeing the starting point of this project. But I don't know if anyone have
Yes,
any other question.
I have another on wellness.
Yes.
We've been talking a lot about wellness, and we did some surveys some time back. I think we did respond to some consultants on wellness, and something a report was made. So, are those the results that we're going to have in this project? Are we going to have another global kind of wellness survey again? What is the plan on wellness? Because this is something that has been on.
So the result of the wellness survey that happened around 2 years ago, I think 2.5 years ago, was used and analyzed at different levels of the organization, especially regional directors, some country directors, to identify the big areas of attention and gaps. We tried to address some of them, not all of them. To be honest, we're still dealing with that conversation. The overload, the feeling of overload and extra work that everyone has is still a very concern for me. And addressing that with Michelle and the team here, and it's a little bit different context, but I think it's very consistent overall. So again, the Global Total Reward have these 4 components. This project is mainly focused in the first 2, in pay, allowances, and benefits. The other part of the people and culture agenda have plans to work in the other areas, but they are not part of the main project, you know. So we have some speciality and differences. So yes, the wellness is still in the top of the agenda, and I feel we need to do more effort on that. My team is now a little more kind of firm. You know, we have a new people coming in, and we can be able to kind of move the conversation. We are going to have a global engagement survey by February, March, that will be also asking questions about this, and we can be able to kind of then discuss what exactly we're going to put in place. There are changes that are required to be structural in care to address the wellness. You know, the wellness is not an individual issue only in the organization. There are structural things that determine why our wellness or well-being is not in the level that we need to be. So that's the level of discussion that we are having. And if I need to put an example, we have a lot of people that cannot take leave, right? Because they don't have anyone to back up. We make some changes in the structures, and then the people say, like, I cannot leave, you know, nobody can take my piece, you know. So we're going to start addressing some things that are more structural that can be able to help us. Country directors in hardship position highlight that to Michelle, for example, and we were trying to put some what we call roving CDs, people that can be immediately available. So some of our colleagues in the more hardship situations can be able to really take the rest they need. So we start to address some of these things, but to be honest, it's an agenda that is still pending that we need to continue working on.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. I think there is some questions that you continue having and doing through the Global Total Rewards at care.org. Reggie and Anne, there is an email that goes to all the teams, so can be able to be addressed. So feel free to do it. Don't stop and just wait for the next call that we will have. We were trying to do Zooms every one and then that the project is moving, so people can know where we are going and what we're doing as soon as we have news for everyone. So thank you everyone for your participation and the questions that were great. So see you next time, and hope that we will show great news.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.